welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Buddy's Showboat, released in 1933. It's the 69th in the series and it's directed by Earl Duvall. Yes, as you can clearly see, there's no official release, and as I understand it, there's no scanned print anywhere, like a raw print. I mean, I'd even be happy with that at this point. This is like a 5th generation VHS, and even the uncut bits are even worse quality than that. It's still watchable, but yeah, this one definitely needs some attention. So in case you haven't seen this one, I mean, if you look at sites like Dailymotion, you can pretty much find this anyway, but essentially, Buddy is a boat captain, and we see a few gags setting up the scene, and Buddy sets up a show, and later on we see the unnamed villain go after Cookie. So it's pretty straightforward, there's nothing too complex here. It's mainly revolves around gags to get over the fact that Buddy isn't exactly a fun character. What you're first going to see is a re-edit of the original audio commentary I did before I had to take that down. Then you'll hear from my good friend Matt Hunter, where he had some technical snafus, but he definitely was able to get his point across regarding Buddy and Earl Duvall in this short. Then you'll hear a few more thoughts from me and a conclusion. So, grab some popcorn and enjoy Buddy's Showboat. I've sort of felt spoiled because we've had so many of the wonderful restored prints recently, and now we're back to just, yeah, 2nd or 3rd generation, 5th generation, whatever you want to call them, prints. But at least with this one, and I had to actually track this one down, this one's uncut. Turns out the print that I had on my media server all this time was actually cut, and I'll show you what they actually cut out as well. This particular Buddy cartoon seems to develop some sort of a formula that they may go through. I haven't actually seen any of the other Buddy cartoons except for one, which was the other restored cartoon on the Golden Collection. Now this scene here with those singing minstrels, that was cut out from the other print I had. Now this character's back from Bosco's Beer Garden, and if you listen to that commentary, I mentioned he kind of looks like a bad guy, but he doesn't really do much by way of being a bad guy. But in here, it turns out he is a bit of a bad guy, and I think they were trying to develop some sort of a foil for Buddy and Cookie. Yeah, this one at least tries to do some sort of a story, and now, I mean, Buddy's Day Out had a story in there, somewhat, but yeah, it didn't quite work for me. At least this one's a bit more solid, in my opinion. Look at the face of Buddy. Look at his eyes. He was really, really happy. But I noticed something interesting between this print and the cut print that I had, that originally I was going to use until I managed to find this one. See, the girls in the back, they're a lot more solid, more darker, whereas in the uncut print I had, they were more faded, like what the Bosco and the Merry Melodies cartoons did for background characters. So I'm not sure why it was just so different, but oh well. And now the cut bit here is when Buddy introduces the next character called Chief Saucer Lip. Yeah, I'm sure that'll go well in this day and age, and he just turns into a Maurice Chevalier singer. Just very bizarre, just what they do here. As I said before, you know, you change Buddy and Cookie to Bosco and Honey and little to no difference. So joining me today for this one is my good friend Matt Hunter, who, well, he is just like me, thinks that these early Earl Duvall shorts are actually pretty decent. Isn't that right, Matt?
I do. I think Earl Duvall was actually a really pretty good director, and he had too short of a stint to really judge him too harshly, especially when it comes to Buddy, because Buddy, I don't hate Buddy. I don't think all these cartoons are all that bad. But here's my issue with them in general, is that he was the result of too many cooks and not enough ingredients. Like, after 25 cartoons by 5 different directors over a 2-year period, they still never really defined Buddy as a character. And a few of the Buddy cartoons, including these early ones by Earl Duvall are pretty good, but then if you watch the whole series in a row, you notice that what actually worked in one was quickly forgotten in the next. So that's my observation of Buddy as a whole. But what Duvall does here is he's actually funny. I don't know if you've noticed, but compared to some of the later Buddy cartoons, this one is pretty good.
Yeah, I agree.
And there are certain gags in here that you wouldn't really see in some of the later ones, and I don't really fault the other directors for not being as funny. I think part of it is because the Hays Code was coming down right at the same time. So there's some kind of risque humor in these early Buddies that you don't see in the later ones. And it also doesn't help that Duvall got himself fired after making only 2 or 3 of them. So, whatever remnants of his ideas remained in a couple of other ones. Like if you see this villain in this cartoon, he's kind of, I would call him Dime Store Bluto.
Yes.
Bluto. But that was definitely Duvall's character, and I think you were saying it might have been Frank Cashman's influence for a while. Like he was with the studio briefly, and then he left, and then he came back again. But you were saying that the villain might have been Cashman's design, and certainly some of the kind of risque humor was his style, so it doesn't surprise me that maybe Cashman had an influence there for a bit. But again, with the Hays Code coming down, like you can't have gags like, for example, in the opening you have the ferry boat. I don't know if you noticed that, but there was a rather politically incorrect slur for, back then they didn't call it the LGBTQ community. It was just a incorrect term for that. Let's just say ferry. And of course,
Yeah.
the boat acts a little bit effeminate, and it's yeah, okay, that maybe didn't hold up that well, but it's still kind of funny. And then you've got when Buddy calls Cookie on the phone, and I guess I don't know how a steamboat has an internal telephone in 1933, but there you go. And the bells on Cookie's telephone jiggle like a pair of breasts. It's just, okay, that's pretty funny. And then there's just some other things like where the villain looks at Cookie and like his eyes focus just straight on her butt. I mean, those are things that are immature and politically incorrect and stuff that you wouldn't see after 1933, 1934 when the Hays Code came out. There's also a bit where they're on the stage on the showboat and they do that umbrella dance. That's pretty advanced animation. You've got 2 different layers, maybe even 3 different layers of cells going there with some background dancers, and that's kind of fun. And then you have this character that appears called I think he calls him Chief Saucer Lips or something, and it's really politically incorrect African native. But then he does something you completely don't expect such a stereotype to do, and that is that he imitates actor Maurice Chevalier. Like all of a sudden he goes into this French routine of this French romance actor, and it's funny because you don't expect it. You don't look at that caricature and all these other cartoons you see where there's cruel African stereotypes. It's like, no, he's going to do a Chevalier impression for no reason other than you don't expect it, and it's funny. So, and then there's a little bit of a Popeye dynamic going on with Buddy and Cookie and the villain. And in the end, it's kind of the same ending that you see in, if you've ever seen Hitting the Trail to Hallelujah Land, which is an earlier Harmon and Ising short where they actually lower a villain on a crane. I think it's a saw blade in that one, but in this one he gets spanked by the paddles of the riverboat. But overall, I think it's a pretty decent cartoon. It's not knock it out of the park funny, but it's better than some of the later ones, and I think it shows what Buddy could have been as a series if Duvall had stuck around, and maybe they'd had a little bit more freedom to do naughty humor. If you have any other thoughts on it.
Yeah, Matt, I think this is actually a pretty decent short, unlike my editor who's already putting a few notes in here saying it's a bad cartoon. I mean, yeah, it's filled with awful stereotypes, whether it's, minstrels or in the case of that fairy, yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't have jokes like that today. I mean, it was never funny in the first place, but anyway, different times and all that jazz. So yeah, and as my editor already pointed out, we're pretty much it's pretty much like Steamboat Willie in the beginning. So I doubt I doubt it's a rip-off. It's something that you would see in a lot of movies. I mean, you got Steamboat Bill Jr. by Buster Keaton, and you got various um, uh, movies and short films and that sort of thing that revolve around steamboats. So this is not exactly unique to Mickey Mouse and in Steamboat Willie. But yeah, it's still pretty funny if you think of it like a Steamboat Willie knockoff, though. So this actually was shown on Nickelodeon, and that's where the better part of the restoration that's used for this review comes from. But they got rid of the stereotypes, which is fair enough. And what they would do is that they would actually reuse that sausage gag twice. They'll keep the whole song, which, despite the imagery, is actually quite nice. It's Swanee Smiles. I'm not sure exactly if that song is featured in anything else. If you know about your music for that, please let me know. But yeah, it's a nice song, but yeah, they did away with the imagery there, along with that whole, Chief Saucer Lip. Yeah, pretty bad. And I do like, with the gags in the beginning, which of course are setting up the scene and life on the boat, that kind of thing. I do like unnamed villain Bluto Light, as Matt Hunter called him. You think he's shaving a potato, but then as the camera pulls back, he's shaving his toenail. I thought that was a pretty lovely gag there. And yeah, I love my silly little. I mean, this is not really a dad joke per se, but it's kind of that. It's like the anchor having done nothing. It's like, oh, I've got a job to do. Wakes up, goes to the bottom of the water, and goes back to sleep. I thought that was funny. Was I laughing hysterically? Of course not. And my editor probably thinks I'm lying in that regard. But anyway, I thought it was a pretty good joke. And that parade sequence that we see, which pretty much is just stretching out the story. It doesn't really add much to it, but we've got some nice, hilarious characters and animation, and it really does show that the only way you can make Buddy work is by making all the surrounding characters actually funny and interesting. And yeah, as Matt Hunter already mentioned, we got that obvious naughty boob joke. I mean, the phones really did look like that, but of course they decided to take that one step further, and they really make it, jiggle. But we see a cutesy bit, and this is why, why does this work and not that whole middle sequence of Buddy's Day Out with the whole cutesy sequence, that would you woo sequence? It's awful, just thinking about it. But why does it work here? And yeah, it's cutesy, it's a nice little moment there. Not everything has to be funny, but I like how, it's a cute moment, but it also sets up a funny gag. And so you got the whole thing where Buddy and Cookie, of course, are in a relationship. We're establishing that here even further. But then this villain comes up, tries his luck, and then we get the nice knockout. Is it the greatest gag ever in Looney Tunes history? No, but there's a point to it, and it's also shows that it actually sets up what happens at the end as well. That he's definitely interested in her. It's not deep storytelling, but it's there for a reason at least. I have to say the best animated bit of this short has to be the close-up of the Maurice Chevalier impersonator. And I don't know who animated it, and I don't think anyone really knows who. Would it be Jack King? Because if you look at, A, he's credited, and B, if you look at the earlier films he directed, he does all these weird angles and stuff. I wonder if it's him. I don't know. I honestly don't. But it's really, really good. It's not going to rival anything Disney ever did, but I thought it was quite a nice touch. And speaking of nice touches, we get a kangaroo playing the piano. That's kind of random. I don't know why that's the case, but it's definitely there. So, and then look, it does kind of just end. Like, nothing really happens with the villain. The villain's like, yep, I'm gonna try and get Cookie, but he's defending her honor, and and then there's not really much of a fight. It just ends, and we just get a walrus finishing everything off that we just randomly see. So the ending's kind of weird, but anyway. So, look, this one is definitely uneven, but much like with Buddy's beer garden, at least Earl Deval has some idea of what he wants to do with Buddy. Like, he's trying to make, I guess, like a Popeye type dynamic, with the trio, like Popeye, Bluto, Olive Oil. Yes, Popeye would only debut in the same year, 1933. And yes, the earlier shorts don't just have that dynamic. Popeye would actually do other things as well. It was only later on in the late 40s and 50s, when famous studios were doing them, that they would just pretty much focus on that dynamic and next to nothing else. But you still can't deny that that dynamic is there. And, it's just funny that I think, yeah, Earl Deval's pretty much did it first before Popeye. I mean, it's just a coincidence. I'm not saying someone's stealing from Earl Deval or anything. It's just one of those odd things. I would imagine if Earl Deval wasn't fired, I would think that this sort of uneven story structure will get fixed up. Like, he would improve as he goes along, and his next and final Buddy short actually shows a bit more improvement than this one. But look, this one gets about a 6.5 out of 10. It's nothing too memorable, but it's definitely an amusing way to spend the 6 minutes. It just has the unfortunate stereotypes in there, both the minstrels and the fairy gag. But yeah, it's definitely got enough interesting things in there to make me want to watch again, hopefully in a raw scan, or dare I say, a proper restoration one day. But that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care.